Hey y'all, David here. I know, we're supposedly on break and here I am posting again, but I promise this is a lot less effort than most of our episodes are to produce. This conversation that I'm about to share is a conversation that I had on Instagram Live last week with the creators of the new short film Sippin. I've described Sippin as a story of 4 women of color, restorative justice practitioners, sitting down to sip on some tea while spilling the tea on white fragility that they've experienced in the work, specifically from white women. As you'll hear in the conversation, this is based off of one of the chapters in Colorizing Restorative Justice, written by Gilbert Salazar, but you're going to hear so much more from him, the director, and one of the actors in this film, so I'll let them share their perspectives and stories. Right up top, I want to let you know that they still need support to push this film past the finish line in post-production, so if you want to learn more and support their work, the link to support is in the show notes. If you can't support financially, please tell a friend. This is a really special film that so many people need to see. Enjoy this conversation. Well, hello everybody. We are very, very excited to bringing this conversation together. This thing called Amplify RJ has been a thing about amplifying restorative justice work, and we're bringing a couple folks on, Gilbert and Rosa, to talk about a short film that they are producing. I'm also helping to produce, and yeah, very excited. So Gilbert's here, welcome. I know Rosa just messaged me, and she'll just be jumping on in a second. But Gilbert, while we've got you here and we have some other folks in the room, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey David, what's up? How are you? Good to see you. Hey everyone, good evening, late afternoon. My name is Gilbert Salazar, and I am the writer and executive producer of the short film Sippin, and also an RJ practitioner, which I've spent many years working in RJ. And yeah, I don't know if that's all I've got for now. Let me know if you want me to say anything else. What's up with us?
Yeah, that's perfect. And Rosa, right on time. I didn't know what account you were coming from, but welcome. We just had Gilbert introduce himself, and this is actually my first time meeting you face to face. But do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Sure. My name is Rosa Navarrete. I'm a Peruvian mujer with ancestry in God knows where, but mestiza, and I was raised in Los Angeles. I have a Chicano accent. Nice to meet you.
It's so wonderful. We're so grateful to have both of y'all here. And for those of you who are here in the chat, feel free to introduce yourselves and share where you're coming in from. But we're going to get started. I first learned about Gilbert's work and this work around Sippin from the book Colorizing Restorative Justice, which is an anthology of essays edited by Dr. Edward Valandra, written by a bunch of different restorative justice practitioners of color, talking about their experiences doing this work. It's a wonderful book. If you haven't picked it up yet, definitely should do that. But Gilbert's chapter was written in a play form, written as a script, detailing the experiences of women of color restorative justice practitioners as they navigated the training. Gilbert, you want to tell us a little bit about that, and what was your inspiration for making that your entry into the anthology?
Sure. I have spent many years as a restorative justice coach and strategist, and so I was in collaboration, training and coaching a lot of schools and school communities, and so doing a lot of trainings and coaching. And I noticed that very often white women in the room would treat me differently than they would my colleagues of color, which were also women of color, in terms of interruption or in terms of just asking if what the information that was just said was valid or accurate. And so there was choices and behaviors that were not happening onto me, but were happening onto colleagues. And so in observation and in curiosity, I started asking more questions with colleagues and also just being more aware of what was happening in the room when I would co-facilitate with a woman of color. And as I was asking those questions and being curious and receiving stories and experiences from colleagues of color who are women, I was like, this is, I was driving home one day in traffic because I used to live in Glendale, California, and would go back from Long Beach to wherever. And traffic can inspire a lot of ideas when you're sitting in traffic here in LA. And I just saw a group of women at a tea party as an image, and I was like, oh, that's really, and it was an image that just kept staying. I think multiple times. And so I was like, I have all of these experiences that I've heard. And so I asked all of my friends and colleagues if I could incorporate those into like a play. And I think I just sort of drafted a story first. And then it was very apparent that it was for women and they were at a tea party talking about these stories. And so I wrote the dialogue, it became a play. And then I was in a workshop production of my very first play called Unmasking Hercules, and our stage director, Luana, had asked if I had a script that she could use because she wanted to direct at a theater festival, at the Filicalo Theater Festival. And I was like, actually, I do have something. And I told her the idea, and she was like, I want to direct that. So we submitted it, and it got staged. And so before all of that happened, I asked consent for all of those friends and colleagues to use their experiences, and those became Sippin, the story.
Yeah. And then submission to the book of essays, and the book Colorizing Restorative Justice has had a huge impact on the restorative justice community. Historically, restorative justice, the colonizer terms, restorative justice in English, right? It's been white-led, it's been very academic, even though we're talking about practices and principles that are indigenous and ancient, that live within all of us, and doing this work is remembering those things. It's been a shaking and a wake-up call to many folks in the RJ community, especially practitioners who are white. And, it's great that things live in a book, but you decided to take it beyond that. And now we've got a short film on our hands. Tell us how you thought to take the idea to the next level and why you wanted to partner with Rosa.
Yeah, so the play, I was at I think the RJ conference in Oakland a few years ago, and that's when I saw the submissions for the abstract for the book that became CRJ, and I knew I wanted to write something. And I had always, at the end of each training, written about, what has happened in that training. And so a goal was always to write, it still is to write a book, but in the essay for the CRJ book, I was like, I want to write something, but I wanted to be creative. And so I remembered Sippin, and so incorporated that chapter around vulnerability and accountability. And then, one thing leads to another. And so there was a beautiful gift and blessing of, we had an opportunity as the authors of CRJ to apply for a grant to create something that would promote the book. And so I wrote my first grant to create, Sippin was already as a short play in the chapter. And so I was like, well, it would be an easy transition, I think, to create that as a short film and have an event with it and have I know a lot of the authors from CRJ have written about whiteness and white fragility and their impact as women. And so the grant included that event symposium, which is still being planned for February. But the grant got accepted. And so, but the grant was like, I wrote the grant because my spiritual brother, Kieran Gopal, was like, we should produce something, you should produce something, you should apply for that grant. And so out of his motivation, encouragement, coaching, I applied and we got accepted. And so when that acceptance happened, there was only one person that I really wanted to be and to invite as director. And that was Rosa, who I've known from work at Casa 010101, and it was really important that I was really mindful that Kira and I are two male-identified people, two men, and the director had to be a woman. And so Rosa, I approached Rosa, and Rosa said yes, and has been a collaborator in all kinds of ways. And so I'm happy to pass the mic to Rosa to add anything else to the story.
Yeah, absolutely. Before you jump in, Rosa, for those of you who are just joining us, we're talking to two of the creators behind the upcoming short film, Sippin, which I've been telling people has been a tea party where women of color are both sipping and spilling the tea on white fragility and how it's been playing out on them as restorative justice practitioners. Gilbert wrote it, came to Rosa to direct it. Rosa, when this guy came up to you and was like, I've got this script with this idea of this tea party about white fragility centered around the stories of four women of color, what was your reaction?
For most projects that have a lot of value, I would say, and have a lot of substance, I'm always afraid. So the first initial feeling is fear of like being charged with somebody else's words, which I always take very seriously. And then also somebody else's whose values are aligned, but also, you know, it's their work. And I've seen Gilbert's other work, and I know that it's always deep and meaningful. So that was my initial feeling, which is natural for me. And then I was like, oh, okay, how are we going to do this? And it kind of evolved because I had just stepped out of directing kind of like this hybrid Zoom play film that was full length. And so the initial idea for this was also to do something on Zoom. And then Gilbert just came back and said, let's do a short film. Like, things are opening up again. Let's be safe about it and mindful, but also, can we do that? And so we did. We got all of our hats together and collaborated on ideas and decided to make a short film on an actual like location. And then Gilbert and Kieran are just such phenomenal human beings that they had, you know, I've been in many other type of experiences with short content or films where I find myself doing most of the work, and not because nobody wants to help me, but because I don't know how to ask for help. As a Latina, it's a thing I carry and that I have to like shed. And so Gilbert and Kieran were really phenomenal and always checking in and saying, well, what else can we do? What else can we do? What else can we do? And so this idea just started blooming, and I was able to invite this amazing director of photography to be part of it, Nel Calmanza. And then he said, hey, this script is really beautiful and I don't want to just, you know, guerrilla it like we usually do. Like, how about I bring my team? And so then we had a lighting gaffer, and we had like a legit professional team come and support and give us a fee that was, you know, digestible for independent BIPOC content creators. And so we hold them in our hearts as we're even in this process, because we know a lot of people gave a lot of their skill and time. But that's how it happened. And it's been really wonderful and actually kind of refreshing and new for me too. I'm still, you know, like I said before, I'm used to doing things on my own. So now that I have people, the whole like holding of those things is new for me, and it's been really wonderful and a learning lesson. And I'm glad I get to do it with Gilbert and with Kieran and Sarah and Joanna Gawatra. They're just an incredible team.
Yeah, it's taking things from, you know, just a script, a chapter, to, you know, this thing that's about to exist in the world as a production, does take a lot of teamwork. And like, as I was talking to Gilbert about the process in which you all came together and went through shooting and all those things, full transparency, I don't have background in Hollywood. I don't have background in film production. But from what I was understanding, this was a very different kind of production. I don't know who wants to take lead on this, but given this is a short film about restorative justice, how was that infused in the way that you all went about approaching this project?
Wow. I mean, I'm new to the language for restorative justice. I feel like I've practiced restorative justice, but only because I grew up in a community that my father was very mindful, and so I tried to carry that, even though I failed many times. But I try to carry that energy with me. So when restorative justice started happening, I heard it through Gilbert, I heard it through Wendy Corazon, another member of Casa 0101 Theater, and learning about how to be accountable but also make space for vulnerability was really impressive to me, and how that was enveloped in the filmmaking process. I mean, I've been on sets. I was like on Tron Legacy, the remake of Tron. I've been on TV sets, and it's very much like do your job, go over, above and beyond. And yeah, we get taken care of and fed and everything, but it's very like, here are the departments. Don't touch anybody's stuff. If you're craft, your craft. If you're lights, your lights. Safety over everything. But there was another element to this, and I feel like people, and I hope that people, because I don't want to speak for anyone, felt held. I felt very held by the community. Gilbert and Kieran created a system. I'll let Gilbert talk about it. A system of like how to invite people onto the set, and how to make sure that people felt heard, and that the process was, in flow during the day. And there are things that I discovered thereafter this that were like, oh, this could have used that much, but this one was really great. And so we did kind of like a post-mortem talk about it. But Gilbert, yeah, how was your experience?
So I'm very new to film, and actually my experience with film is through Rosa, because Rosa is an amazing director and has a production company called Matriarchy Films. And so I was an actor in a film that Rosa directed that her friend Patricia Zamora wrote maybe 3 years ago or so, a few summers ago. And I saw Rosa do like everything, and Patricia do everything, and Lauren, who was also a producer and in the story playing Frida Kahlo, I saw the three of them do like everything. And so I was just like, well, I guess that must be what independent short film looks like. And so I had that imagery when Kieran and I were getting ready for production and asking people. I mean, I just sort of I knew Rosa, and we asked Rosa, who do you know? Who do you want to bring on? And I had a lot of trust for the folks that Rosa named, and the cast and crew is amazing. And so, but I had all those gaps of like what a producer is and what a producer does. I had to learn very quickly, but in all of those gaps, each time I had a gap or a question, I was like, I don't know how to do this. I kept thinking of, I know how to assemble a team, or I know how to work with people, or I know if you don't know something to ask for support, or there's wisdom in the room. And so I was like, I know how to do this. And so it was very much like a coaching session or a training or working in a school, because schools are workplaces. And then I was like, what's happening is we're creating a work team, and we're creating a workplace, because a set is a workplace, just like a school is, just like an office is. And just before the pandemic, in the organization I was working with, which is California Conference for Quality and Justice, I was doing research around RJ in workplaces. And so I remembered some of the things that I was researching and some of the gaps in research around RJ and culture and community in workplaces. And so I just filled in what I knew from RJ. And so what that looked like, I mean, there was a lot of things I didn't know, like contracts, and I learned how a film project is, created through many, many spreadsheets, of which Rosa created many amazing Excel spreadsheets. But when we had initial meetings with folks, or with Rosa, with Kieran, we would always begin with a check-in. And those check-ins we know that in RJ that a check-in can give a lot of information and build culture and community and build relationships. And so I just went from what I know, but the day as we, everything from like I don't know, whenever we started to the spring to like the summer, and we shot on one day in August. Everything before that was all about the one day of shoot, and it was all about safety because of COVID, and it was all about culture, and also because of the story and the experiences that are real. It was also a lot about care, and I knew that Rosa understood that and was also very, because she took care of me when I was an actor in that project, for that short film called Puta, and I just was like, I'm just gonna do what I know to do. And the day of the shoot, we started, I think, at like 6 a.m. Kira and I showed up, and maybe it was 5, I think it was like 6. And I had about like 3 minutes because Sarah K. Peters, who was our production coordinator manager, was doing the safety talk, and we were doing names and roles, because it was the first time that everybody was in space together, and people had not met each other. And so I just knew what to do, which was, I sent out the survey, and one of the questions was, what's the value that you need to feel effective or productive at work or on a project? And then early on, I was like, I need it. It's a film called Sippin. It's women who are drinking tea. And so one question I asked on the survey was, what do you want to drink on a really busy day? And so I got that information, and, got all of those specific drinks. And all of that was impactful. And I know that many folks who, in cast and crew, who have way more experience on set and in their crafts than I did. I remember folks talking about how sometimes they don't get water, and they'll be on a set for like 12 hours. And Kira and I were just like, how do you not take care of people? And so, the thing that RJ taught me was to take care of people. People's needs are real. And yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. There are so many things that aren't about what happened, who was impacted, and how do we make things right, process of restorative justice that, go beyond that. It's just human relationships. How are we taking care of each other? How are we, making sure that we are proactively building those relationships? And then not just learning those things, but following through on those things. And when you told me that story about like giving the drinks to folks, providing those drinks, responding to people's needs, I was like, oh, wow, like this is really different. This is really important. And I can definitely imagine how many of the folks involved with that project felt like really seen and cared for and considered in that process, in the process of the filmmaking. I also imagine many of the folks who are working on this project were excited about, diving into this specific content, right? You talked about how it's reflective of many of the people who you've worked with and their experience with white women, either dismissing, belittling, clamming up, turning on the tears, all of these things. You brought in 4 other women of color who weren't these women. the stories didn't belong to them, but I'm sure there was some resonance. What was that process of bringing those stories to life? I know you're not those actors and can't speak for them, but as the crew that was bringing those to life, what was that like?
Oh, wow. I think even the audition process, which was done through Zoom, was really revealing in that a lot of people, after they read or after we did ensemble work during the audition process, would say, thanks for writing this, or this has happened, but not in that specific way, but to them in a certain capacity. And that was kind of like a reminder for me to be like, oh, okay. This not only is based on real people, but also the universal message of how white fragility has impacted women of color will be part of the process, the audition, the rehearsal. And Gilbert was really great at, I'm very late access in my thought process, so I'm very much like goal oriented. And I love people like Gilbert, who's very early in like middle access, where they like to talk about the Germification, like let's get a little deeper. Let's talk about like la masa, the math. And that's a constant reminder for me as a creative. And so that was part of the process during our rehearsal is how is this related to you personally? And sometimes our actors, I don't want to speak for them either, would share something personal, and sometimes they would just say, yes, understood. And that was enough because we don't also want to, I didn't want to push and be like, tell me your trauma. Right. So much of that happens already, every application process for grants, every application process for a writing fellowship is like, tell me your trauma. And we don't want that. So I didn't want that on the set. And so, I will say that, there were also sidebars with the women and sidebar conversations about how does this, I would say it's a dialogue heavy piece, because there's a lot of narrative around the memory and what you remember, but how does that relationship connect with you when you're out in the world? Like, how can you connect whatever is out in the world into this moment? And then I also had a real conversation with, with relationships between different races, because we're all BIPOC, but also like, how does an Asian person relate to a Latina? How does a Latina relate to a Black woman? And like, what does that mean that you're all choosing to be together? And I'm sure I have friends from all, demographics, but how does this relationship, what's the word? How does it surface these really delicate stories? How do they surface in a safe way, at this table where you're all, BIPOC, or women of color, but you're also coming with different experiences that are some in some way connected to white fragility. They're also very specific, to that, individual's culture. So those conversations happened like in sidebars or during the rehearsal, and sometimes they were private and sometimes they were amplified. And I know our character Tona, Karina Contreras, had a very, I would say like visceral moment after one of the climactic parts of the film when we were filming it. And I remember that there was no need to say what happened because we all kind of understood that she was tapping into spirit and tapping into like a very deep memory. And so when it occurred, we just embraced. I asked her for permission. I'm like, would you like to be embraced? And we hugged it out as mujeres. And then thereafter, to check in, she said it was a really great moment for her as an artist and also as a Latina. Like, we checked in. But Karina, I'm sorry, I don't want to speak for you, but yeah, that was, for me as a director, observing that and seeing how she tapped into spirit was really powerful. Like, I almost didn't want to touch her because it was just like, whoa, you went there and we all felt it. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And, would love to have Karina on to talk about, her story and her perspective. Like, and the reason that I ask that is because sometimes, we live in a world where there are so many things to consume all the time, whether it's podcasts, Netflix, YouTube, swiping on TikTok, whatever your vice is. And I just want to highlight the amount of care and intention that went into this project. And I'm so excited to have it be brought to life. So it's already been filmed at this point, and now we're in post-production. For the uninitiated, what all does that entail, and what do you all still need support with?
What I've learned, and Rosa knows much more than me, is that there's a whole, just like we had to assemble a whole production team and crew, there's a whole post-production team as well. And so right now the film is in the hands of our editor, Quyen, and they are in the process of editing the film. Rosa and I have seen the initial rough cut of it without any polish or Rosa's directing notes, without any music, and just all of the desires that I had, and actually Rosa and I haven't even talked about it. It's all been through email, but all of the hopes and desires that I had in the tension and in the complexity of the story on the pages, and because I knew 3 of the 4 women who were in the cast in different ways. One is my professor from grad school. One was a coworker. The other one, I was also in a scene partner in one of the films that I also directed. And so there was multiple networks of relationships that day. And so there was multiple ways that I knew them in different ways in different places. And so there was trust and there was care that I had in faith in everybody in all of their roles. And so going back to also what also shared about care and intention and spirit, I did we shot in Rosa's in-laws house. And so Rosa, also provided that for us with that. And so, I was like, I'm just going to do what I know to do when I do Circle, which is to bless the place and prepare it, which is also very similar to, and so we did that with spirit and with intention. And it was powerful and beautiful. And we set up the day for that and for care and for the unleashing and release that's already on the pages and that was asked of cast and crew. So when I saw the rough cut, all of that was there. And that was like with no music, no glass, none of the other ideas that Rosa has very specifically that Rosa contributed. And so it was really powerful. So it's being edited, but then it has to have color correction, and then sound is a really important part of the film and of the story. Because essentially what we're asking audiences to engage in and witness is a ritual. And so ritual also often has sound to it. And so there's someone just for sound. And then a friend of mine, Erika Reyes, who's also going back to community, my Ayurvedic coach. She is also a musician. And so she's our music editor. And so there's all of these folks that will have their hands on it. And then a friend of mine who created my logo is the graphic designer Pamela Chavez. And so we've assembled another beautiful, amazing team of folks within our communities that we know. And just like we were able through the initial grant to pay folks for production, we want to pay folks for their effort and their labor, because everyone's hand on it will have impact and intention. And we live in capitalism, and because of that, we want to honor folks for the skill and the talent that they've gone to school for, that they've had the experience for, and also to contribute to their own abundance in their own field and in their own work. And so post-production is the final stages, which includes also a lot of work and a lot of trust in artists. Is there anything else that I missed, Rosa?
No, I think that's it. Sound design, sound mixing, which is going to take process and time. Our original score with Erica and Q and Nguyen, I'm going to shout out right now. They're our editor. And one of the films another project that they're doing just got into Sundance, a documentary. So we're in really good hands, but we want to make sure we honor their skills and pay them. And there's also goals for festivals and other plans in the future. So we're making sure that we're not thinking with, what is that called? When you're thinking small? We don't want to think small, we want to think big. So we know what can happen. We want to be prepared for the things that'll happen in the future, in addition to paying our artists. And a couple of crew members also who were on set, who came on last minute for us and worked for free, and 2 people. And they're still in our hearts and in our minds, because, to do that at this time during COVID, during the pandemic, like, you must really love what you do. So they're also going to be paid for their time. It's thereafter, but, with a lot of love from our hearts, because we know that the times are hard right now, and people making art, I mean, it feels like a revolutionary act for sure. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
we also
absolutely.
want to have containers for the film. We know we really want to, I want to activate folks in dialogue and conversation from the conversations that are happening with these four women in the story. And to activate folks, there needs to be a container to hold that. And so like dialogue or circles or panels. And so really a dream of mine as the writer part of me is to be in space with people and to listen to people and to ask people's questions. And when I watch the rough cut, there's all of these complexities. There's all of these questions that we ask. There's a question that's asked at the table in the film. And so I want to hear what people's responses are. And in order for that to happen, in order for people to be witness to it, we need to present it in a way that is true and authentic to the way in which I was told the stories and given the consent, and the way in which I think at this point, like 15, 16 people will have worked on it when it is presented. And so because this film was created through consent and through community, through relationships, and created in collaboration, in the final product, in the readiness of it, it still requires community, but I think even more abundant than the 16 people that worked on it, the production team, and so that requires folks to support it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And how can people support?
People can support. We have a crowdfunding campaign at this point to pay for post-production and also to pay for the little bit left over for what we had for production. And so on our Instagram is the link to our Seed and Spark page. And so we've raised about half of our amount. Our campaign is for $12,000. We're near at half of that. And so we need more funds and more support from folks, so folks can support it through that website on that campaign. I want to say that all amounts add up to abundance. Abundance as a person of color, as an artist, I have spent many, many years just picturing 50 people in a small theater to watch something that I wrote, of stories that I collected. And so I had to do a lot of spiritual work to be able to visualize that, to have the capacity to be able to handle that. So through all of this process with Rosa and with Kira and with all of the folks that worked on it, we worked in intentional abundance. And so we are asking for folks to give whatever that they can, but all amounts equal to abundance, and for us to be able to present this to folks.
Yeah, absolutely. This gets pushed and amplified into many spaces the more people know about it. So money is a huge part of this for sure, but there are lots of other ways that you can support. And right now I'm just referencing a Instagram post that y'all put together a little bit ago, asking your communities and networks to follow and support both on Facebook, on Instagram, and, support the campaign, because this is only going for a limited time. The funding window closes January 3rd,
right?
January 3. So, this isn't like 501c3 tax deductible, but like if you're thinking about the end of year giving, this is the time. If other people are thinking about end of year giving in your spaces, this is a worthy project. So asking your communities and networks to support, amplifying any of the posts is definitely helpful. Even sending prayers for abundance, setting intentions for abundance for this campaign, for this project, is beautiful. Of course, you yourself following Sippin on Instagram and Facebook. And, if we're going to make a hard ask, a concrete ask right now to the 11 of you who are still here, and to those of you who are going to watch this later on IGTV, and to those of you who are going to listen to this when it re-airs on the podcast, This Restorative Justice Life, yes, donate yourself, but send it to the 5 people who would really be impacted by this project. Send this to your local Karen. Send this to the person at work who deeply resonates with the work, with the words of the women of color and those experiences so they feel seen. Send this to the men in your life who are like, I know that there are things that I don't have insight into that I can learn from this project. There are so many people who can and will be impacted by this project in the future. We're going to make one more call for support at the end, but, we're talking, I'm really excited about, this coming to life, and when is this going to be shown? When is this going to be premiered?
If you go to our Seed and Spark and follow or subscribe there, then you can receive the update of the particular date this winter that we are working towards for this online symposium, which will have 4 panelists from the CRJ, the Colorizing Restorative Justice book, and we are also working towards screening the film for the first time on that event. So to get that date, please go to our Seed and Spark and subscribe and follow there.
Nice.
Or also give
Love it.
At the amount of creation, which we're at the $50 amount if you can, and you will get a specific invitation for that date as well. But we ask for folks to go on Seed and Spark.
Hold on.
Karina, I was talking about you.
I was gross right now, but hi.
No, you look beautiful. Karina, I was just talking about you, about our experience on set. I said that you tapped into spirit, but I didn't want to speak for you, so we're wondering if you wanted to share that experience. I mean, yeah, whatever you want to ask. RJ.
Yeah, hi. I'm Karina, she, her. I played Donna in Sippin, and I was very, very fortunate to be able to work with such a great cast and crew. And it was such an amazing experience. It was actually, so I was actually talking to my girlfriend about this just earlier. It was one of the most positive and amazing experiences that I've had on set. 'Cause I'm a theater actor. That's what I do. That's what I know. And so I'm very limited in my film experience, but this was the most positive experience I've ever had on a film set. Everyone was super professional. Everyone was super just talented and just very giving and open up the space. And so, it was just such a great experience to be a part of. And, it was such an honor to be part of this film. And I'm so excited to see where it goes and just to see how many people it reaches. So, yeah.
And it reaches so many more people when y'all support in all the ways that we've mentioned, whether that is financially, link in the bio, in the Sippin bio, by just spreading the word on social media and, IRL. Y'all see people now who the world is opening back up little by little, are really just sending well wishes and intentions to folks who are continuing to work on this project, to put on the finishing touches and to, continue to amplify restorative justice work and film by queer folks, film by women, film by people of color. This is so needed. Any closing words from all y'all before we close this time together?
Wow.
Not me, not yet.
1, 2, 3.
I'll say it. I know. Karina just joined and she's like, what happened?
I know,
I'll say something.
Sorry.
No. Thank you for jumping on. I want to say, and I don't think I've said this yet, but I'd love to dedicate the project to my mom, my mother, my aunties. There's a line in this film that says that too, and it resonated with me because sometimes, I see a lot of memes these days. Sometimes people are like, man, our parents didn't do this, our parents didn't do that, and I'm messed up, and no sé qué. And then I have to reflect back on the things. Like, my mother was 23. She flew into Panama with a 5-year-old and 3-year-old. And then she crossed multiple borders up into Mexico to the U.S. And survived with 2 young daughters, including myself. And sometimes I think about that and I'm like, wow, women of color are so strong. Mujeres, we endure so much, especially our parents, I would say. They've endured so much, and yet they get up every day with a smile on their face and they keep going. And that just teaches me resilience, but also you can take away, and my dad would say this too, you can take away my house, you can take away my car, you can take away whatever, like the keys to my Ferrari, but you can't take away my integrity, you can't take away my ancestry, and you can't take away my culture. And so he always would say that whenever I felt like I wasn't enough. He's like, that stuff doesn't matter. So I just wanted to, I guess, dedicate the project to my ancestry, the people in my life who help me get up every day and remind myself of how blessed I actually am and how much privilege I do have. This is a privilege to be able to voice the things that are problematic in our communities, and how do we amplify those problems through art. Yeah.
I don't know if Karina knows this. Rosa, I shared this with Rosa at the end of that day of shoot. But there was what I think will be my favorite moment is the moment that Rosa was speaking of earlier that Rosa did, which is the beginning of the film story. And we shot that in the living room of Rosa's in-laws. Shout out to them, thank you. And I was in the dining room where we would shoot the rest of the story. And I was in the corner and I was adjusting plants because I was also the co-set dresser that day. And so I was like looking at plants and like making sure, because we had to hide, there was a mirror behind one of the actors, so we had to be strategic about it. And then I look over and, the shooting was happening, but it was we weren't recording audio. And so I look over and Karina is in front of this altar that we had just created and dressed. And we had talked about this months earlier that we were going to have a monitor, but I forgot that conversation. And so I saw Karina, and then across from me I looked, and there was like a big ass monitor, and I can see Karina's body and I see Karina's face, and I had this moment of like, oh shit, we're making a movie. And the immediate thought after, like the immediate like voice was, of course you are. And it has taken years to like get to this question of, oh, I'm doing this. Am I doing this? And then a longer pause of like an affirmation of yes, you are. But that moment in seeing Karina, seeing the monitor, immediately was like, of course you are. And so it was just this like deep affirmation. But the other thing that I don't think Karina knows is there was a painting that we put in front of like the altar. It was on the mantle. I don't know if I told you, but I had painted that years ago because I wanted to create a painting to do a homage of the women in my family. And so the face in that, it's a woman that's praying, and there's 4 panels. Each panel represents a woman that's creating an act of labor, essentially. And so, but the face is a woman named Josefina, who my very first job, I was a dishwasher. And so I worked with her, and I saw how some of the staff treated her as a dishwasher and sort of like didn't respect the labor that she was doing. And I was a dishwasher and a server, so I was back and forth in kind of both worlds. And so I drew her face for the painting, but the hands were the hands of my grandmother holding a rosary. My grandmother passed about 2 years ago, and when I witnessed Karina and what in just, again, in the rough cut that some of us, that Rosa and I saw, there's layers of what I witnessed there. And so my dedication to the film is to my doubt that I worked so much in making smaller and still and acknowledging it. But the other dedication is to my grandmother, who was very present, and it, like, her hands were in front of Karina. And so that was just a deep, beautiful moment, witnessing in that moment. And so, yeah, it was powerful.
Oh my God, I didn't know that. Ugh.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I guess in closing, even though I just joined, that moment, and like Rosa said, she didn't want to speak on it, but that opening moment, it was so surreal because I kind of just sat at that altar, and as soon as I like kneeled in front of it and they said, action, it was like both of my grandmothers were right there with me. They were both like, I could feel both of their energies. So everything that happened in those moments was them just speaking to me. I don't even know how else to describe it. They were just there with me, and I guess I would like to dedicate that performance to them because I channeled them and they were there with me, and I just thought of all of the things that they struggled with and everything that they went through, just as immigrants and as women of color, and everything that they had to do to raise their families and just be able to, exist, basically. It was just such a powerful thing, and I know, again, they were there with me, and they just guided me through all of that and were able to get me through all of that. So yeah, I love them, and I hope that they love what I did. And I know they're going to be guiding me through, the rest of my journey here. So yeah.
I was laughing at, I don't know who's on the Sippin Instagram right now, but it's true. They were there. They were sipping.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all of the grandmas, all the ancestors have been blessing this project, will continue to bless this project, and we're inviting you all to continue to support this work. Again, follow Sippin on Instagram, on Facebook, donate to the campaign, share with family, friends, and even Karen at work about all this goodness that's coming out of this short film that's going to be premiering early next year. So stay tuned for all of it. Thank you all so much for being with us this evening, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you, David, for hosting this space and for creating this container. And thank you also, David, for your contribution. It's much appreciated.
Absolutely. Like what you heard? Please subscribe, rate, review, and share this podcast on whatever platform you're using right now. It really helps us further amplify this work. You can also support us by following us on our social platforms, signing up for our email list, rocking our new merch, joining our Patreon, or signing up for a workshop. So many options! Links to everything in the show notes and on our website, amplifyrj.com. Thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week.